I'm 32, and my family has always been my everything. Growing up, money was tighter than a drum. Mom and Dad worked themselves to the bone, juggling jobs just to keep a roof over our heads. But even with all that, we still struggled. I remember the electricity getting cut off, scraping together meals from whatever we could find, and the constant worry etched on my parents' faces about making rent. Those years, man, they were tough. They shaped me. So when I finally landed a killer job in my late 20s, I swore I'd make things easier for them. At first, it felt amazing, like I was finally paying them back for all the sacrifices they made. I started small, covering overdue bills, helping out with my little sister's, she's 27 now, college tuition, making sure there was always food on the table. But as my career took off, so did the requests. Suddenly, it wasn't just about necessities anymore. It was about tuition for my brother, he's 24, luxury vacations they deserved, new gadgets, even a full-blown home renovation. My sister developed this habit of casually mentioning needing the latest designer bag or a new phone, and somehow, I always ended up footing the bill. My brother would drop hints about needing help to stay afloat at college, which I later found out meant funding his party lifestyle. A year ago, I hit my breaking point. Staring at my bank statements, it was like looking at a family expense report, not my own finances. I did the math, and the numbers were staggering. In the past 5 years, I'd spent more on my family than I had saved for myself. I hadn't even started seriously investing for my own future, let alone my upcoming wedding. It wasn't just about the money anymore. It was the entitlement. They acted like this was my duty, like I owed them everything because they raised me. When I finally tried to set some boundaries, things exploded. My parents accused me of forgetting where I came from, of becoming this cold, heartless stranger. My siblings piled on, guilt-tripping me about how much they'd sacrificed to support my dreams when I was younger. It didn't matter that I'd already repaid them tenfold. The final straw? A few months ago, my sister wrecked the car I'd bought her. Her first reaction? Not an apology, not a hint of remorse, just a flat-out demand that I buy her a new one. Like it was her birthright, I refused. That's when the real drama started. I called a family meeting, hoping to finally clear the air. I laid it all out. The stress, the resentment, how their constant demands were impacting my mental health, my relationship with my fiancée, who, bless her soul, had been pushing me to stand up for myself. I went in hoping for some understanding, a little empathy. Instead, I got yelled at, accused of being selfish, of turning my back on the family. My dad went on about how I was abandoning them, and my mom started crying about how they'd always been there for me. My siblings chimed in, calling me ungrateful, saying I was leaving them high and dry when they needed me most. After that meeting, the real fallout began. My family started a smear campaign, spreading stories to anyone who would listen. Suddenly, I was the ungrateful son, the millionaire who left his struggling family to rot. They posted these vague, dramatic updates on social media about being betrayed by someone they loved. Extended family members started messaging me, asking why I wasn't helping out anymore. It even spilled over into my work life. A coworker awkwardly mentioned seeing one of my sister's posts about how money changes people. I felt humiliated, betrayed, like I was being punished for trying to set healthy boundaries. My therapist kept encouraging me to stand firm, reminding me that their reaction was more about their dependency than any wrongdoing on my part. My fiancée was my rock through it all. She even suggested that maybe I needed to go public with my side of the story, not for revenge, but to regain control of the narrative. The final blow came when my family issued an ultimatum: publicly apologize for abandoning them or be cut off entirely. After everything I'd done, they were threatening to disown me unless I caved. That's when I decided enough was enough. For a week, I wrestled with it. Went over every conversation, every transaction, every time I'd sacrificed my own goals for theirs. And I came to one conclusion. It was time to take control. I was done being their scapegoat. I started with a cryptic message on social media, hinting that I was about to address some family drama. It got people talking, messaging me, asking what was going on. But I was ready. They wanted an apology. Fine. They were about to get one, just not the kind they were expecting. The next morning, I sat down at my computer, staring at the draft I'd written. It was all there. Everything I'd been holding back for years. With a deep breath, I hit post and tagged each member of my immediate family. I started by thanking my parents for everything they'd done during my childhood. I talked about how their hard work and sacrifices inspired me to strive for success. Then, I laid it all out. In detail. Every single bit of financial support I'd provided over the years. Tuition, mortgage payments, car down payments, luxury vacations they insisted were family bonding, even the times I bailed them out of unexpected expenses. I itemized it all, making it crystal clear just how much I had contributed. From there, I explained why I had to stop. I talked about how their endless demands were draining me emotionally and financially, how I'd spent years prioritizing their needs over my own, only to be met with more entitlement and guilt trips. I made it clear that this wasn't about being ungrateful, but about protecting my mental health and building a future for myself. The post was live for maybe 5 minutes before the comments started rolling in. My sister was first, accusing me of humiliating her and the rest of the family, calling me selfish, saying I was exaggerating. My brother chimed in next, calling me a liar, saying I was using money as a weapon. My parents didn't comment publicly, but the family group chat exploded. Message after message, each one angrier than the last. They accused me of airing dirty laundry, betraying the family, being a disgrace. But while all that was imploding, something unexpected happened. Friends, colleagues, even distant acquaintances started commenting on my post. A few of my closest friends defended me outright, pointing out how unreasonable my family's demands had been. Some shared their own stories of setting boundaries with entitled relatives. My fiancé left a thoughtful comment, reminding everyone that boundaries are an act of self-care, not a rejection of love. Then the post started getting shared, first by people I knew, then by complete strangers. Within hours, it had gone semi-viral. It was a whirlwind. My phone was blowing up. Calls from my parents demanding I take the post down. Messages from extended family members, some supportive, others condemning me for being heartless. What surprised me most were the messages from strangers. People I didn't even know were thanking me for sharing my story, talking about how they'd been through similar experiences, how they wished they had the courage to stand up to their own families. That evening, I sat down with my fiancée, just to decompress. She told me how proud she was of me for standing my ground, even when it meant facing all this backlash. Seeing the post go viral was nerve-wracking, but I didn't regret it. For the first time in years, I felt like I was in control of my own narrative, but the drama was far from over. My sister, in a move that surprised no one, made her social media accounts public and posted a lengthy rebuttal. She painted herself as the victim, claiming I'd promised to support her no matter what, and was now breaking that promise over petty disagreements. She conveniently left out the car I paid for, the designer shopping sprees, the constant expectation of money without explanation. Her post blew up within our family circle, with relatives taking sides. Then came the anonymous messages. At first, I thought they were from random trolls, but the tone felt personal. They hinted at things only my immediate family would know, accusing me of being a failure, threatening to expose secrets about me. It wasn't hard to connect the dots. Someone in my family was behind it. Things escalated. I got called into an unexpected meeting with HR at work. Someone had sent an email to my company, claiming I was unstable and shouldn't be trusted. Thankfully, my company had my back, but it was a wake-up call. My family was willing to cross lines I hadn't even considered. Meanwhile, my post continued to gain traction online. Someone shared it on Reddit, and it blew up there too. The comments were filled with people sharing similar stories, calling me brave, offering advice. Then another bombshell dropped. My younger brother, the one who always needed help, staying afloat, was drowning in debt. Not just from poor budgeting, but from a gambling problem. He'd taken out loans, maxed out credit cards, the whole 9 yards. And when the family tried to confront him, he deflected, blaming me for refusing to help him out. It was absurd. A divide started forming within the family. Some relatives reached out privately to say they understood my perspective, but were hesitant to say so publicly. Others doubled down, siding with my parents and siblings, continuing to badmouth me. I realized I needed to create some distance. I blocked my siblings and parents on all platforms, cutting off the constant stream of negativity. It wasn't easy, but it brought an immediate sense of relief. I knew I couldn't rely on boundaries alone, so I consulted a lawyer. The anonymous messages, the email to my employer. It could be considered harassment. They advised me to document everything and consider taking legal action if it continued. Through it all, my fiancée and her family were incredible. They commended me for standing up for myself, offered support, a safe haven from the chaos on my side of the family. To take my mind off things, I focused on wedding planning and hobbies I'd neglected for years. It felt strange, but liberating, to redirect my energy towards things that brought me joy. Before ending the week, I posted a brief update on social media. I thanked everyone for their support and shared that I was taking steps to protect myself from further harassment. I ended the post with a cryptic teaser, hinting that I'd discovered something major about my family's behavior that I would address soon. The truth was, I had uncovered something that could change everything, but I wasn't ready to share it just yet. A few days after my last post, I got a message from a distant relative, someone I hadn't spoken to in years. It was short, but unsettling. You should look into where your money's been going. Not everything is as it seems. They didn't elaborate, but it was enough to set me on edge. Curiosity turned into action. I spent the next few days digging through years of old bank statements and receipts. At first, everything seemed normal. Then I noticed discrepancies, large withdrawals, unexplained transfers, odd payments to businesses I didn't recognize. The more I looked, the clearer it became. My family had been misusing the money I gave them. The first bombshell came when I cross-referenced a hefty payment I'd made to help cover my parents' mortgage. Instead of going to the mortgage company, a significant chunk had been used to buy a timeshare in Florida. A timeshare? I didn't even know they had one. A quick search confirmed it. Not only had they been using my money for it, but they'd also taken multiple vacations there. Trips I was never invited to join. It got worse. My sister, who I thought was using the money for college tuition, had been spending thousands on designer handbags, jewelry, luxury clothes. She'd even posted pictures online, showing off her purchases with captions like, "Treat yourself." Then came my brother's financial disaster. The same relative who tipped me off confirmed that his massive debt wasn't just from poor budgeting, it was tied to a gambling problem. I confirmed this by digging through the financial records he'd casually shared with me in the past. Multiple cash withdrawals at casinos, payments to online gambling sites. I was furious. I'd spent years sacrificing my own goals to support them, and they were living it up behind my back. I drafted a long email, outlining everything I'd discovered. The timeshare, the luxury purchases, the gambling debts, everything. I sent it to my parents and siblings, demanding an explanation. The responses were predictably defensive. My parents insisted they had earned the right to enjoy life after everything they'd done for me. My sister admitted to using the money frivolously but brushed it off, claiming she thought I wouldn't care because I have so much. My brother lashed out, blaming me for abandoning him and saying I should have been more involved in his life. It was excuse after excuse, with no accountability from any of them. Enough was enough. I posted a follow-up on social media, carefully laying out the details of the financial misuse without naming names. I explained how the money I'd provided for education, housing, and emergencies had been squandered on luxuries, gambling, and vacations. The reaction was immediate. My friends and extended family flooded the comments. Some were shocked and disgusted by my family's actions, while others expressed sympathy, sharing their own experiences with relatives who had taken advantage of them. The post quickly went viral again, drawing support from strangers who said it was a wake-up call about the importance of setting boundaries. The backlash against my family started almost immediately. Friends and relatives began calling them out directly, questioning their actions and demanding accountability. My mom called me in tears, begging me to stop humiliating the family. She claimed I was ruining everything and that she was getting non-stop messages from people criticizing her. I wasn't moved. If they had been honest from the start, none of this would have happened. I consulted my lawyer again, who advised me to send cease and desist letters to my family for the defamatory social media posts they'd been making about me. It was a necessary step to protect myself from further damage. As the dust settled, I reflected on everything during a session with my therapist. She helped me see how long I'd been carrying the weight of their manipulations and how freeing it was to finally confront the truth. It wasn't easy, but uncovering their betrayal helped me process years of resentment I hadn't even realized I was holding on to. To wrap things up, I posted another update online, thanking everyone for their support and sharing how these revelations had pushed me to take control of my life. But I ended the post with a teaser. There was one more shocking discovery about my parents' finances that I wasn't ready to reveal yet. I knew it would send shockwaves through the family when it came out, but for now, I needed time to prepare. The next step would be the biggest yet, and I wasn't backing down. A week after my last post, a letter arrived that nearly knocked me off my feet. It was from the bank, a formal notice about a delinquent payment on a second mortgage taken out on my parents' house. The problem? My name was listed as a cosigner. I had no knowledge of this mortgage, let alone agreed to cosign it. At first, I thought it was a mistake, but after contacting the bank, the truth came out. My parents had used my information to secure the loan. They'd forged my signature and listed me as a cosigner without ever telling me. The loan was for a significant amount, and they'd already missed several payments. My lawyer confirmed it was a clear case of fraud. The forgery alone was a serious legal issue, but the implications of the missed payments could damage my credit and financial stability. I had no choice but to take action. When I confronted my parents, they didn't deny it. Instead, they justified it by saying they did it for the family. They claimed they'd always planned to pay it back and never intended for me to find out. My dad insisted it was the only way to keep the house afloat, but I knew that wasn't true. Between the timeshare in Florida and their other frivolous expenses, it was clear they weren't just using the money for necessities. I gave them an ultimatum: resolve the debt immediately and remove my name from the mortgage, or I'd be forced to take legal action. They pleaded with me to handle things privately, but after years of lies and betrayal, I wasn't about to take their word for it. My fiancée was furious, but she channeled her anger into helping me focus. We were a team, and we'd get through this together. As news of the fraudulent mortgage spread, the divide within the family grew deeper. Some relatives supported me, while others accused me of being heartless and blowing things out of proportion. I posted a vague update on social media, hinting at the fraudulent mortgage and emphasizing the importance of protecting one's financial independence. The post went viral and even caught the attention of a few media outlets. My parents were livid, begging me to stop airing the family's dirty laundry. I reminded them that they'd been publicly shaming me for months, and this was simply me standing up for myself. Within days, I officially filed a lawsuit against my parents. My lawyer assured me this was the right move, not just to protect myself, but to set a precedent that this kind of behavior wouldn't be tolerated. I also froze all my financial accounts to prevent any further misuse. My support system was my saving grace. My fiancée, her family, and my closest friends rallied around me, offering emotional and practical help. They reminded me that this wasn't about punishing my parents, but about reclaiming control of my life. The online community continued to show overwhelming support. Strangers shared stories of similar betrayals, thanking me for being open about my experience. It was both heartbreaking and comforting to know I wasn't alone. The story took another twist when my parents hired a lawyer to fight back against my claims. They claimed I had given them verbal permission to use my name on the mortgage, insisting it was a misunderstanding. The courtroom was tense. My parents recounted their sacrifices, framed their actions as desperate measures, and even shed tears. But the forged documents were undeniable. The judge ruled in my favor, declaring the mortgage fraudulent and ordering my name to be removed. My parents were held solely responsible for the remaining debt. As we left the courtroom, my parents and siblings confronted me, accusing me of ruining their lives. I didn't engage. For years, I'd let their words cut me down, but this time, I walked away. Back home, I updated my online followers, sharing the outcome of the case and thanking everyone who had supported me. The response was overwhelming. For the first time in years, I felt a sense of relief. The weight I'd been carrying was finally lifted. In therapy, I reflected on how far I'd come. Setting boundaries hadn't been easy, but it was necessary. I was finally free to prioritize my own happiness without guilt or fear of retaliation. With the legal battle behind me, I shifted my focus back to my future. Wedding planning with my fiancé became a source of joy and excitement. We chose a small, intimate ceremony, intentionally keeping the guest list limited to people who genuinely supported us. Before moving forward completely, I sent one final message to my parents. I made it clear that I wouldn't have any further contact with them unless they sought therapy and took accountability for their actions. I didn't expect them to respond or change, but it was important to set that boundary. My siblings attempted to reconnect, claiming they wanted to move past everything. While I appreciated their attempts, I kept my distance. Their role in the situation had been clear, and I wasn't ready to let them back into my life without seeing genuine change. As life began to settle, I found myself drawn to helping others navigate similar challenges. I started a blog, sharing my experiences with toxic family dynamics and the steps I took to break free. The response was incredible. People reached out, thanking me for putting into words what they had been through, and offering advice they could apply to their own lives. Looking ahead, I feel hopeful. My fiancé and I are building a life filled with love, trust, and mutual respect. The scars from this experience will always be there, but they're a reminder of the strength it took to stand up for myself. My story might have started with betrayal, but it ends with freedom. And that's all I could have ever hoped for.